Sometimes the most powerful moments happen when duty meets humanity. In a world where protocols are sacred and traditions run deeper than bloodlines, what happens when the human heart collides with royal responsibility? This is the story of Captain James Mitchell, a man whose unwavering dedication to protecting others will be tested not by assassins or threats, but by something far more challenging: his own emotions and the unexpected kindness of strangers. In the sterile corridors of London Heathrow Airport, where thousands pass through daily without a second thought, one delayed flight would reveal the extraordinary bond between a royal guard and the family he was sworn to protect. It's a story that reminds us that behind every uniform, every title, and every position of authority, there beats a heart capable of profound love and unexpected vulnerability. What started as a routine escort mission would become a testament to the power of human connection, the weight of responsibility, and the moments that define who we truly are when everything we've trained for is put to the ultimate test. Captain James Mitchell adjusted his crisp uniform one final time as he stood in the private departure lounge of London Heathrow Airport. The early morning light filtered through the floor-to-ceiling windows, casting long shadows across the polished marble floor. His trained eyes continuously scanned the area, noting every entrance, every potential threat, every detail that could matter in the next few hours. This was more than just another assignment for James. Today, he was escorting Princess Charlotte and her two young children, Prince William and Princess Emma, on what should have been a routine diplomatic flight to Edinburgh. James had been part of the Royal Protection Squad for 12 years, but this particular assignment held special significance. Princess Charlotte had specifically requested him for this journey, not because of his impeccable service record or his numerous commendations, but because of something much more personal. 3 months earlier, during a public event in Manchester, James had noticed a suspicious individual in the crowd. His quick thinking and immediate action had prevented what could have been a dangerous situation involving Princess Charlotte's youngest daughter, Emma. The princess had never forgotten that moment, and neither had James. The captain's relationship with the royal family had evolved over the years from purely professional to something approaching genuine friendship, though he never allowed himself to forget the boundaries of his position. Princess Charlotte, despite her royal status, was known for her warmth and genuine concern for those who serve her family. She remembered birthdays, asked about family members, and showed a level of personal interest that went far beyond what was expected or required. James's own family had been touched by this kindness when his mother had fallen seriously ill the previous year. The princess had not only sent flowers and well wishes, but had also arranged for his mother to receive treatment at one of the finest private hospitals in London. As James waited in the departure lounge, he reflected on how much his life had changed since joining the Royal Protection Squad. Growing up in a small town in Yorkshire, he had never imagined that he would one day be responsible for protecting members of the British royal family. His path to this position had been shaped by tragedy and determination in equal measure. His father, a police officer, had been killed in the line of duty when James was just 16 years old. That loss had driven him to pursue a career in law enforcement, determined to honor his father's memory by protecting others. The journey to becoming a royal guard had been rigorous and demanding. Years of training, psychological evaluations, background checks, and continuous assessment had all led to this moment. James had learned to suppress his emotions, to remain calm under pressure, and to prioritize the safety of others above his own. He had been trained to be invisible when necessary, to anticipate threats before they materialized, and to make split-second decisions that could mean the difference between life and death. Princess Charlotte entered the lounge at precisely 9:30, accompanied by her children and a small entourage of staff members. James immediately straightened to attention, his professional demeanor taking over. The princess was dressed in an elegant navy blue traveling suit, her bearing dignified yet approachable. Prince William, now 14 years old, walked beside his mother with the confidence of someone already being prepared for his future responsibilities. Princess Emma, At just 8 years old, skipped slightly as she walked, her natural childhood energy barely contained by the formal setting. "Good morning, Captain Mitchell," Princess Charlotte said warmly, extending her hand in greeting. "Thank you for accompanying us on this journey. I know how busy your schedule is." "Your Highness, it's my honor," James replied, his voice professional but tinged with genuine respect. "I've reviewed all the security arrangements, and everything appears to be in order for our departure." The princess smiled, and James noticed something in her expression that he hadn't seen before. A slight tension around her eyes, a barely perceptible worry that spoke of something more than the usual concerns about travel. He made a mental note to remain extra vigilant throughout the journey. Prince William approached James with the easy confidence that came naturally to him. "Captain Mitchell, will you be telling us any more of your stories during the flight? Emma hasn't stopped talking about the one you told last month about the time you helped catch those art thieves." James couldn't help but smile slightly. During a previous flight, Princess Emma had been frightened by turbulence, and, to distract her, James had shared a carefully edited version of one of his earlier cases. The story had captivated both children, and it had become something of a tradition for him to share appropriate tales from his career during longer journeys. "We'll see, Your Highness," James replied. "Perhaps if time permits, and your mother approves." Princess Emma bounced on her toes excitedly. "Please, Mother. Captain Mitchell's stories are much better than any of the books we bring." Princess Charlotte laughed, a sound that seemed to ease some of the tension James had noticed earlier. "We'll see, darling. First, let's get through the journey safely." As they prepared to board the aircraft, James conducted his final security checks. The private jet that would carry them to Edinburgh was a sleek, modern aircraft equipped with all the necessary safety and communication equipment. James had personally inspected every inch of the plane earlier that morning, working closely with the aviation security team to ensure that no detail had been overlooked. The boarding process was smooth and efficient. James positioned himself strategically where he could observe both the royal family and maintain clear sight lines to all entrances and exits. As the aircraft prepared for departure, he felt the familiar surge of focused attention that came with the beginning of any protection detail. Every sound, every movement, every person in his vicinity was cataloged and assessed for potential threats. The flight to Edinburgh was scheduled to take just over an hour, and the weather reports indicated clear skies and smooth conditions. Princess Charlotte was traveling to Edinburgh for a charity gala that evening, an event that would raise funds for a children's hospital that held special meaning for her. The princess had been patron of the hospital for nearly 8 years, ever since Princess Emma had been treated there as an infant for a serious respiratory condition. As the aircraft taxied toward the runway, James allowed himself a moment to appreciate the trust that had been placed in him. Protecting the royal family was more than just a job. It was a sacred responsibility that he never took lightly. Each member of the family represented not just individuals, but symbols of continuity, tradition, and service to the nation. Their safety was paramount, and James understood that his role extended far beyond physical protection to encompass their emotional well-being and peace of mind. The engines reached their full power, and James felt the familiar sensation of acceleration as the aircraft began its takeoff roll. Within moments, they were airborne, climbing steadily into the clear morning sky above London. James settled back into his seat, maintaining his watchful alertness while allowing himself to relax slightly during what should have been the routine portion of their journey. Princess Charlotte had brought along several documents to review during the flight, preparations for her various engagements in Edinburgh. Prince William was absorbed in a book about British military history, while Princess Emma had already begun working on a puzzle that she had brought specifically for the journey. The cabin was filled with the quiet, comfortable atmosphere that James had come to associate with traveling with this particular family. As they reached cruising altitude, James noticed that Princess Charlotte seemed more relaxed than she had in the departure lounge. The tension he had observed earlier appeared to be easing, and she was even smiling as she reviewed what appeared to be thank you letters from children at the hospital she would be visiting. It was moments like these that reminded James why he had chosen this profession, the opportunity to serve people who genuinely cared about making a positive difference in the world. The flight continued smoothly for the first 30 minutes, with the aircraft maintaining its steady course toward Edinburgh. James monitored the radio communications between the flight crew and air traffic control, noting nothing unusual in their routine exchanges. The captain had reported excellent flying conditions, and their estimated arrival time remained unchanged. It was then that James first noticed the subtle change in the aircraft's engine tone. His years of experience flying on similar missions had given him an acute sensitivity to such variations, and something in the sound pattern had shifted almost imperceptibly. He immediately pressed his communication earpiece to contact the flight crew. "Captain, this is Mitchell. I'm detecting a possible change in engine performance. Please advise." The pilot's response came back calm, but serious. "Captain Mitchell, we're experiencing some irregularities with our starboard engine. Nothing immediately dangerous, but we're going to need to divert to Manchester for a precautionary landing. Please prepare the passengers for a slight change in our flight plan." James felt his training kick in immediately. While this wasn't a security threat in the traditional sense, any deviation from planned routes required careful management and assessment. He needed to inform Princess Charlotte of the situation while maintaining calm and ensuring that the children didn't become unnecessarily alarmed. "Your Highness," he said quietly, moving to the seat beside Princess Charlotte, "we're going to need to make a brief stop in Manchester due to a minor technical issue. The pilot assures me it's purely precautionary, and we should only be delayed by a few hours at most." Princess Charlotte looked up from her documents, her expression immediately shifting to one of concern, not for herself, but for her children and their schedule. "Are we safe, Captain?" "Absolutely, Your Highness. This is standard procedure for any irregularity, no matter how minor. The pilot is taking every precaution to ensure our safety." As the aircraft began its descent toward Manchester Airport, James began planning the logistics of what would likely be an extended delay. He would need to coordinate with ground security, arrange appropriate waiting facilities, and ensure that the royal family's comfort and privacy were maintained throughout whatever delay might occur. What he couldn't have anticipated was that this routine technical stop would soon become something far more significant than anyone aboard the aircraft could have imagined. Manchester Airport's control tower had been notified of their emergency landing request, and within minutes, James could see the sprawling complex of runways and terminals coming into view below them. The landing was smooth and professional, a testament to the skill of their pilot, but James knew that the real challenges were just beginning. An unscheduled stop with the royal family required immediate coordination with multiple security agencies, airport authorities, and transportation logistics. As the aircraft rolled to a stop at a secure area of the airport, James was already on his radio, coordinating with the Manchester Airport security team and the local police forces who would need to provide additional support during their stay. The princess had remained remarkably calm throughout the landing process, though James could see the concern in her eyes as she watched her children's reactions to the unexpected situation. Prince William, displaying the maturity that would serve him well in his future role, had immediately moved to sit beside his younger sister when the pilot announced the diversion. Princess Emma, while clearly nervous about the change in plans, was handling the situation with the resilience that James had come to admire in both royal children. "How long do you think we'll be here, Captain Mitchell?" Prince William asked, his voice steady despite his obvious concern about their disrupted schedule. "I'm working on that right now, Your Highness," James replied, maintaining his professional tone while internally calculating the numerous variables that would affect their timeline. "The important thing is that everyone remains safe and comfortable while the aircraft is being inspected." Within 20 minutes of landing, James had established communication with the head of Manchester Airport Security, Chief Inspector Sarah Williams, an experienced professional who understood the complexities of handling royal visits on short notice. She had immediately activated the airport's VIP protocol, ensuring that a private lounge would be available and that media access would be strictly controlled. "Captain Mitchell, we have the royal family secured in the Platinum Lounge. Chief Inspector Williams reported as they walked through the airport's administrative corridors. I've stationed additional personnel at all access points, and we've implemented a complete media blackout regarding their presence here. However, I should inform you that we're dealing with some staffing issues that might complicate the situation. James felt a familiar tightening in his chest that came with any unexpected complication during a protection detail. What kind of staffing issues, Chief Inspector? We've got a new airport services coordinator, Marcus Thompson, who started just last week. He's enthusiastic about following protocols, but he doesn't quite understand the flexibility required for situations like this. He's already raised several concerns about the aircraft inspection process and the timeline for departure. I've tried to explain the situation, but he seems to think that royal or not, everyone should follow standard procedures to the letter. This was exactly the kind of bureaucratic complication that James had learned to navigate carefully during his years of service. While he appreciated the importance of following proper procedures, he also understood that certain situations required adaptive thinking and discretionary judgment. The safety and comfort of the royal family had to be balanced against legitimate security and operational concerns. The Platinum Lounge was an elegant space designed to accommodate high-profile travelers, with comfortable seating areas, private dining facilities, and secure communication equipment. Princess Charlotte had settled into one of the comfortable chairs with her documents, while Prince William was helping his sister with her puzzle at a nearby table. The scene appeared calm and composed, but James could sense the underlying stress that any disruption to routine created for the family. "Your Highness," James said, approaching Princess Charlotte, "the aircraft inspection should be completed within the next 2 hours. I'm working with airport authorities to ensure that we can depart as soon as the technical team clears the aircraft for flight." Princess Charlotte looked up from her papers, and James could see the weight of responsibility in her expression. The charity gala in Edinburgh was more than just a social engagement. It represented months of planning and preparation, with hundreds of attendees expecting her presence. The funds being raised would directly impact the children's hospital that had cared for Princess Emma during her infancy. "I understand, Captain Mitchell. I know you're doing everything possible to minimize the delay. I'm just concerned about the impact this might have on tonight's event. So many people have worked hard to make this evening successful." Before James could respond, there was a knock at the lounge door. Chief Inspector Williams entered, followed by a tall, thin man in his early 30s wearing an airport administration badge. The man's posture and expression immediately conveyed a rigid adherence to protocol that James recognized as potentially problematic. "Your Highness, Captain Mitchell," Chief Inspector Williams said, "I'd like you to meet Marcus Thompson, our new airport services coordinator. He has some questions about the aircraft inspection timeline." Marcus Thompson stepped forward, his clipboard held at chest level like a shield. His voice was formal to the point of being awkward as he addressed the room. "I need to inform you that the standard inspection protocol for aircraft reporting engine irregularities requires a minimum 4-hour assessment period, followed by a mandatory test flight before passengers can be cleared aboard. This timeline cannot be accelerated regardless of passenger status or urgency." The silence that followed his announcement was heavy with implication. James felt his professional composure being tested in a way that had nothing to do with external threats or security concerns. This was bureaucracy at its most inflexible, applied without consideration for circumstances or consequences. "Mr. Thompson," James said, his voice carefully controlled, "I understand your commitment to following proper procedures. However, I'm sure you also understand that certain situations require some degree of flexibility in implementation. The aircraft in question is maintained to the highest possible standards, and the technical team has indicated that the issue is minor and easily resolved." Marcus Thompson's response was immediate and unyielding. "Captain Mitchell, I appreciate your position, but safety regulations exist for everyone's protection. I cannot and will not authorize any deviation from standard protocol. The 4-hour inspection period is non-negotiable." James felt a surge of frustration that he carefully suppressed. Years of training in diplomatic protocol warred with his natural instinct to take a more direct approach to problem-solving. He glanced toward Princess Charlotte, who was watching the exchange with growing concern, clearly understanding the implications for her evening's commitments. "Perhaps we could speak privately," James suggested to Thompson, recognizing that a direct confrontation in front of the royal family would serve no one's interests. "I'd like to better understand the specific regulatory requirements you're referencing." As they moved to a corner of the lounge, James could see Princess Emma looking up from her puzzle with a confused expression. The 8-year-old clearly sensed the tension in the adult conversation, even if she didn't understand the details. Prince William, demonstrating wisdom beyond his years, had moved closer to his sister and was quietly explaining that sometimes grown-ups needed to work out complicated problems. "Mr. Thompson," James began quietly, "I want to assure you that no one is asking you to compromise safety or violate any legitimate regulations. However, I think there may be some misunderstanding about the flexibility that exists within those regulations for exceptional circumstances." Thompson's response revealed both his inexperience and his determination to avoid any possibility of criticism. "Captain Mitchell, I've read the regulations thoroughly. My predecessor was dismissed for what the administration called inappropriate flexibility in protocol implementation. I will not make the same mistake." This revelation provided James with crucial context for Thompson's rigid stance. The new coordinator was operating from a position of fear rather than malice, concerned about his job security rather than deliberately obstructing their departure. Understanding this dynamic, James adjusted his approach accordingly. "I appreciate your position, Mr. Thompson. Job security is important, and following regulations is essential. However, I think you might find that the regulations themselves provide more flexibility than you realize, particularly in circumstances involving diplomatic missions or official government travel." Over the next hour, James found himself engaged in a careful diplomatic negotiation that had nothing to do with international relations and everything to do with human psychology and bureaucratic navigation. He patiently worked through the relevant regulations with Thompson, pointing out specific clauses that allowed for expedited procedures under appropriate circumstances. Meanwhile, Princess Charlotte had been quietly observing the situation, her natural empathy and emotional intelligence picking up on subtleties that others might miss. She had noticed Thompson's nervous demeanor, his frequent references to his predecessor's dismissal, and his genuine concern about making a mistake that could cost him his position. During a break in the technical discussions, Princess Charlotte approached Thompson directly, her manner warm but respectful of his authority. "Mr. Thompson, I want you to know that I appreciate your dedication to ensuring our safety. As a mother, I understand the importance of following proper procedures when it comes to aviation safety." Thompson was clearly surprised by the personal attention from the princess, his rigid posture softening slightly as he responded. "Thank you, Your Highness. I'm just trying to do my job correctly." "I'm sure you are," Princess Charlotte replied gently. "I imagine it must be challenging to start a new position with such important responsibilities. Captain Mitchell has told me about the regulations you're following, and I want to assure you that we completely support your commitment to safety." What happened next would become a defining moment in the day's events. Thompson, clearly moved by the princess's understanding and support, began to open up about his concerns and the pressures he was facing in his new role. Princess Charlotte listened with the same attention and empathy that she brought to her charitable work, recognizing in Thompson a dedicated professional trying to do right in a difficult situation. "Your Highness," Thompson said, his formal tone gradually giving way to something more natural, "I want to help resolve this situation, but I also need to ensure that I'm not putting anyone at risk or violating regulations that exist for good reasons." It was then that Chief Inspector Williams intervened with information that would change the trajectory of their entire day. "Mr. Thompson, I've just received word from the technical team. They've completed their preliminary inspection and found that the issue is indeed minor, a sensor malfunction that requires only a simple replacement. However, they're waiting for a specific part to be delivered from London, and that delivery has been delayed due to air traffic control issues. The revelation that their delay was no longer about inspection protocols, but about parts availability shifted the entire dynamic of their situation. Thompson's adherence to regulations was no longer the primary obstacle, but the practical reality of aircraft maintenance had created a new set of challenges that would require different solutions altogether. The news about the delayed parts delivery hit James like a physical blow. All of his careful planning, all of the diplomatic negotiations with Marcus Thompson, and all of the reassurances he had given to Princess Charlotte suddenly seemed meaningless in the face of this new reality. The required sensor component was stuck somewhere in London's congested airspace, and without it, their aircraft would remain grounded regardless of any protocol discussions. "How long are we looking at for the parts delivery?" James asked Chief Inspector Williams, though he suspected the answer would not be encouraging. Williams consulted her tablet, scrolling through several messages before responding. "The supplier indicates that the earliest they can guarantee delivery is late this evening, possibly as late as 10 o'clock. The part then needs to be installed and tested, which adds another 2 to 3 hours to our timeline." James felt his stomach tighten as he calculated the implications. Princess Charlotte's charity gala was scheduled to begin at 8 o'clock that evening. Even if everything went perfectly from that point forward, they wouldn't arrive in Edinburgh until well after midnight. The event would be over, hundreds of supporters would be disappointed, and months of planning would be wasted. Princess Charlotte had overheard the conversation, and James could see her processing the information with the same calm determination that had carried her through numerous challenges during her years of public service. However, he also noticed something else in her expression, a deep sadness that spoke to how much this particular event meant to her personally. "Captain Mitchell," she said quietly, "could you join me for a moment?" They walked to a corner of the lounge where they could speak privately without the children overhearing. James prepared himself for what he expected would be a difficult conversation about alternative travel arrangements or the possibility of canceling the evening's events altogether. "I want you to know," Princess Charlotte began, "that I don't hold you responsible for this situation. These things happen, and I know you've done everything possible to resolve the delays. However, I need to ask if there are any other options we haven't considered." James had actually been thinking about alternatives for the past hour, but each option presented significant security and logistical challenges. Commercial flights were possible, but would require extensive advanced security screening that couldn't be arranged on short notice. Ground transportation to Edinburgh would take nearly 6 hours and would expose the royal family to security risks that were normally avoided through air travel. "Your Highness, there are some alternatives, but each one presents significant complications. I could arrange for ground transportation, but the journey time would still prevent your arrival before late evening. Commercial aviation is possible, but the security requirements make it impractical on such short notice." Princess Charlotte nodded, clearly having already considered and dismissed the same possibilities. "What about chartering a different aircraft? I know it's expensive, but if it's available." "I've already checked with the aviation coordinator," James replied. "Unfortunately, there are no suitable aircraft available for charter at Manchester today. Everything capable of making the journey safely is either in use or undergoing scheduled maintenance." As they spoke, James became aware of increased activity near the lounge entrance. Marcus Thompson was speaking animatedly with several other airport staff members, gesturing toward their lounge and consulting his clipboard repeatedly. James's protective instincts immediately activated, concerned that some new complication was developing. "Excuse me, Your Highness," James said, moving toward the group of airport staff to assess the situation. As he approached, Thompson looked up with an expression that combined excitement, nervousness, and determination in equal measure. "Captain Mitchell, I've been speaking with my colleagues, and we might have an option that could help resolve your situation." James felt a cautious optimism rise within him, though his experience had taught him to be wary of last-minute solutions that seemed too convenient. "What kind of option, Mr. Thompson?" "Well," Thompson began, consulting his clipboard as if it contained state secrets. "It turns out that there's a private charter company based here at Manchester that maintains several aircraft specifically for emergency and urgent transport situations. They specialize in situations exactly like this. High-priority passengers who need immediate alternative transportation when their primary aircraft is grounded. The possibility of a solution had James immediately shifting into logistical planning mode. What's their availability, and what kind of security screening would be required? Thompson's enthusiasm was evident as he continued. That's the interesting part, Captain Mitchell. The company, Premier Executive Transport, actually holds security clearances for exactly this type of situation. They've handled similar transport for government officials and diplomats before. The owner, David Morrison, has been trying to reach you for the past hour after hearing about your situation through the airport's communication network. James felt his protective instincts engage immediately. Any unsolicited offer of assistance, particularly one that involved alternative transportation for the royal family, required careful evaluation and verification. However, the possibility that a legitimate solution might exist was too important to dismiss without investigation. I'd like to speak with Mr. Morrison directly and review his company's credentials before considering any alternatives, James said. Can you arrange for him to meet with me here? Within 15 minutes, David Morrison arrived at the Platinum Lounge. James's first impression was of a professional, experienced aviation specialist who understood both the urgency of their situation and the security requirements that would need to be satisfied. Morrison was a man in his early 50s, with the confident bearing of someone who had built his business on reliability and discretion. Captain Mitchell, Morrison said as they were introduced, I want to assure you that Premier Executive Transport has extensive experience with high-security transport requirements. We maintain full clearances with the Civil Aviation Authority, and our aircraft are maintained to commercial aviation standards. James appreciated Morrison's direct approach and his immediate recognition of the security concerns that would need to be addressed. Mr. Morrison, I'll need to verify your credentials and inspect any aircraft you're proposing to use. What's your availability and timeline? Morrison consulted a tablet device, scrolling through what appeared to be scheduling information. I have a Hawker 900XP available for immediate departure once you've completed your security verification. The aircraft is fueled and ready, and my flight crew is standing by. We could have you airborne within 2 hours of your approval. The timeline Morrison was proposing would still allow Princess Charlotte to arrive in Edinburgh in time for a charity gala, though with very little margin for error. James knew that he would need to conduct rapid but thorough verification of Morrison's credentials, inspect the proposed aircraft, and coordinate with Edinburgh security for their revised arrival plans. I'll need to make several verification calls, James told Morrison. Can you provide me with your CAA registration numbers, crew certification details, and references from previous government transport contracts? While James began the process of verifying Morrison's credentials, Princess Charlotte had been observing the conversation with growing hope. She approached Morrison directly, her natural warmth evident even in this stressful situation. Mr. Morrison, she said, I appreciate your willingness to help us resolve this situation. Captain Mitchell will need to ensure that everything meets our security requirements, but I want you to know that we're grateful for your offer. Morrison's response revealed both his professionalism and his genuine desire to help. Your Highness, I started this company specifically to help people in situations like this. Travel delays and aircraft problems happen to everyone, regardless of who they are. If we can help ensure that your charity event proceeds as planned, then we've accomplished exactly what we set out to do. As James worked through the verification process, he was impressed by Morrison's credentials and the thoroughness of his company's security procedures. Premier Executive Transport had indeed handled government contracts before, and their safety record was exemplary. The Hawker 900XP that Morrison was proposing was well-maintained and perfectly suited for the Edinburgh journey. However, James's verification process was interrupted by an unexpected development. Chief Inspector Williams approached him with news that would add another layer of complexity to their already complicated situation. Captain Mitchell, she said quietly, I've just received word that there's been a development with your original aircraft. The technical team has managed to locate a replacement sensor at a facility here in Manchester. They believe they can complete the repair and have you airborne within 3 hours. James felt himself caught between two possible solutions, each with its own advantages and risks. The original aircraft represented the familiar, thoroughly vetted option that he knew met all security requirements. Morrison's charter represented speed and efficiency, but required accepting some degree of additional risk based on abbreviated verification procedures. "What's your recommendation, Chief Inspector?" James asked, knowing that Williams's experience and local knowledge could provide valuable perspective. "Honestly," Williams replied, "both options have merit. Your original aircraft is obviously the preferred choice from a security standpoint, but Premier Executive Transport has an excellent reputation locally. Morrison has handled several high-profile transports for us before, including some government officials, and he's always performed professionally." As James weighed the options, he realized that the decision would ultimately need to involve Princess Charlotte. Both alternatives could potentially get them to Edinburgh in time for the charity gala, but each carried different levels of risk and uncertainty. His responsibility was to present the options clearly and support whatever decision the princess made based on her assessment of the situation. The afternoon was progressing rapidly, and James knew that delaying the decision much longer would eliminate both options by making it impossible to arrive in Edinburgh in time for the evening's events. Time was becoming the most critical factor in a situation where every minute of delay reduced their chances of success. Princess Charlotte had been quietly observing the discussions and consultations, demonstrating the same calm leadership that had characterized her approach to public service throughout her career. When James approached her with the two options, she listened carefully to his assessment of each alternative's advantages and risks. "Captain Mitchell," she said after considering both possibilities, "what would you do if this were your decision alone?" It was a question that cut to the heart of James's professional judgment and personal integrity. His answer would reveal not just his tactical assessment of the situation, but his understanding of the princess's priorities and his willingness to accept responsibility for whatever consequences might follow their choice. James looked directly into Princess Charlotte's eyes, recognizing the weight of responsibility that her question placed upon him. In that moment, all of his training, experience, and personal integrity coalesced into a single point of decision. He understood that she wasn't just asking for his tactical assessment. She was asking him to take ownership of a choice that would affect not only their immediate safety, but also the success of an event that meant deeply personal things to her and to countless children who would benefit from the evening's fundraising efforts. "Your Highness," James said quietly, "if this were my decision alone, I would choose Premier Executive Transport. Morrison's credentials check out completely. His aircraft meets our requirements, and, most importantly, it gives us the best chance of getting you to Edinburgh in time for tonight's gala. The Children's Hospital means too much to you, and to those families who will benefit, for us to risk missing the event entirely by waiting for our original aircraft." Princess Charlotte nodded slowly, and James could see in her expression a mixture of gratitude, trust, and the natural anxiety that came with accepting any element of additional risk. "Then, that's what we'll do, Captain Mitchell. I trust your judgment completely." The next hour passed in a whirlwind of coordinated activity as James worked with Morrison and Chief Inspector Williams to arrange the transfer to the charter aircraft. Security procedures that normally required hours to complete were compressed into intensive verification and inspection processes. James personally examined every inch of the Hawker 900 XP, from its maintenance logs to its communication systems, ensuring that it met the stringent requirements necessary for royal transport. Meanwhile, Princess Charlotte had the difficult task of explaining the change in plans to Prince William and Princess Emma. Both children had been remarkably patient during their extended airport stay, but the prospect of boarding a different aircraft introduced new uncertainties that required careful explanation. "Are we safe with the new airplane, Mother?" Princess Emma asked, her 8-year-old's direct approach to complex situations both touching and challenging to answer appropriately. Princess Charlotte knelt down to her daughter's eye level, her voice gentle but confident. "Yes, darling. Captain Mitchell has checked everything very carefully, and he wouldn't let us fly if he wasn't absolutely certain that we would be safe. Mr. Morrison, who owns the airplane, has been flying people safely for many years." Prince William, demonstrating the maturity that would serve him well in his future role, had already grasped the broader implications of their situation. "This is about the charity gala tonight, isn't it? You don't want to disappoint the people who are counting on the money for the hospital." "That's part of it," Princess Charlotte admitted. "Many people have worked very hard to organize tonight's event, and the funds we raise will help provide medical care for children who need it. But more importantly, I gave my word that I would be there, and keeping one's word is one of the most important responsibilities we have." As they prepared to transfer to Morrison's aircraft, Marcus Thompson approached James with an expression that combined relief, accomplishment, and something approaching genuine emotion. The new airport coordinator had grown visibly more confident throughout the day as he successfully navigated his first major challenging situation. "Captain Mitchell," Thompson said, "I wanted to thank you for your patience today. I know I was probably more rigid than necessary earlier, but I learned a great deal about balancing regulations with practical problem solving. This has been an invaluable experience for me." James recognized the sincerity in Thompson's words and the professional growth that the young man had demonstrated throughout their extended interaction. "Mr. Thompson, you were doing exactly what you should have been doing, protecting people's safety and following proper procedures. The fact that we found a solution that satisfied both security requirements and schedule needs is a testament to your thoroughness and professionalism." The transfer to Morrison's aircraft was completed with military precision, each step carefully coordinated between James, Morrison's crew, and the airport security team. As they boarded the Hawker 900 XP, James felt the familiar surge of focused attention that came with any new environment or change in routine during a protection detail. Morrison himself served as the pilot, accompanied by an experienced co-pilot whose credentials James had thoroughly verified. The aircraft's interior was comfortable and well-appointed, though more compact than the jet they had originally planned to use. Princess Charlotte settled into her seat with the documents she had been reviewing throughout their delay, while Prince William and Princess Emma chose seats that would give them good views during takeoff. As the aircraft prepared for departure, James conducted his final security assessment of their situation. All communication systems were functional, the flight plan had been filed and approved, and Edinburgh security had been notified of their revised arrival time. Everything appeared to be in order for what should now be a routine flight to their destination. "Captain Mitchell," Princess Emma called from her seat, "will you tell us one of your stories during this flight?" The wait at the airport was quite boring. James smiled, recognizing that the request represented both a return to normalcy and an opportunity to help the children relax during what had been a stressful day. "I think I can arrange that, Your Highness. Would you like to hear about the time I helped recover stolen paintings from the National Gallery?" The takeoff for Manchester was smooth and confident, Morrison's skill as a pilot immediately evident in the precision of his handling. As they climbed toward cruising altitude, James allowed himself a moment of cautious optimism. They were now on schedule to arrive in Edinburgh with sufficient time for Princess Charlotte to prepare for the charity gala, and all immediate security concerns had been addressed. However, it was during the flight's most peaceful moments that James received a communication that would transform what should have been a routine conclusion to their journey into something far more significant and emotionally charged. His secure communication device buzzed with an incoming message from the Royal Protection Headquarters in London. The message was brief but alarming. "Captain Mitchell, we have received intelligence suggesting possible security concerns related to tonight's Edinburgh event. Recommend immediate heightened alert status and consideration of event cancellation. Detailed briefing to follow." James felt his stomach tighten as he read the message. After everything they had already overcome that day, the possibility of a legitimate security threat that might require canceling the charity gala represented a devastating blow to all of their efforts. He immediately moved to establish secure communication with headquarters to receive the detailed briefing. The encrypted conversation that followed revealed intelligence about a group of anti-monarchy protesters who had been planning to disrupt the charity gala. While the intelligence suggested that their intentions were more focused on creating publicity than causing physical harm, the security assessment indicated that their presence could create situations that would be difficult to control and potentially dangerous. "What's the current assessment of the threat level?" James asked during the secure call. "Medium to high for disruption, low for physical harm," came the response. "However, we're concerned about the number of attendees and the difficulty of maintaining controlled access to the venue. The local authorities are recommending postponement until better security arrangements can be implemented." James found himself facing another impossible decision, but this time with security implications that went far beyond travel logistics. His primary responsibility was ensuring the safety of the royal family, but he also understood the devastating impact that canceling the charity gala would have on the hospital, the donors, and Princess Charlotte herself. "I need 15 minutes to assess the situation and consult with Princess Charlotte," James told headquarters. "Can you provide me with detailed intelligence about the specific nature of the planned disruption?" As he ended the secure communication, James realized that the most difficult part of his day was yet to come. He would need to inform Princess Charlotte about the potential security threat and help her make what might be the most emotionally challenging decision of her entire charitable career. Princess Charlotte had been reviewing her speech for the evening's gala, making small notes and adjustments that reflected her deep personal commitment to the children's hospital. The paper spread across her seat represented months of preparation and coordination, all of which might now be rendered meaningless by circumstances beyond anyone's control. "Your Highness," James said quietly, approaching her seat, "I've received some information from headquarters that we need to discuss privately when we land. It concerns tonight's event." The gravity in James's voice immediately caught Princess Charlotte's attention, and he could see her processing the implications of his words. After everything they had already overcome that day, the possibility of yet another obstacle seemed almost unbearable. "Is it serious, Captain Mitchell?" she asked, her voice steady but tinged with the weariness that comes from facing one challenge after another. "It requires careful consideration, Your Highness. We'll discuss all the options once we're safely on the ground in Edinburgh." As the aircraft began its descent toward Edinburgh, James looked out the window at the Scottish landscape below and reflected on how much had changed since their simple morning departure from London. What had begun as a routine escort mission had evolved into a complex test of problem-solving, diplomatic navigation, and now potentially the most difficult security decision he had ever been asked to make. The charity gala that had seemed so important that morning now hung in the balance, dependent on assessments of risk and safety that would determine whether months of planning and anticipation would culminate in success or disappointment. James knew that whatever decision was ultimately made, he would need to support Princess Charlotte through what was likely to be one of the most emotionally challenging moments of her charitable career. The landing at Edinburgh Airport was as smooth as Morrison had promised, but James felt none of the relief that normally accompanied the successful completion of a challenging transport mission. As they taxied toward the private terminal, he was acutely aware that the most difficult part of their entire journey was about to begin. The intelligence briefing he had received during the flight weighed heavily on his mind, and he knew that the conversation he was about to have with Princess Charlotte would test both his professional judgment and his personal relationship with the royal family. The Edinburgh security team was waiting as they disembarked, led by Chief Inspector Robert MacDonald, a veteran officer whom James had worked with on several previous occasions. MacDonald's expression was serious but professional, immediately confirming that the security concerns were legitimate and substantial. "Captain Mitchell," MacDonald said as they greeted each other, "we need to brief you immediately on the current situation. We've been monitoring the protest group throughout the afternoon, and their plans appear to be more extensive than initially indicated." James felt his protective instincts sharpen as he processed this information. Any threat that had grown more serious since the initial intelligence report required immediate reassessment and potentially dramatic changes to their security protocols. "What's the current status of the protesters?" James asked, his mind already calculating various response scenarios. MacDonald consulted his tablet before responding. "They've gathered approximately 200 supporters in the vicinity of the hotel where tonight's gala is being held. While their stated intentions remain focused on peaceful protest, the size of the group and their positioning suggests they're planning to significantly disrupt access to the venue." Princess Charlotte had been listening to the conversation while ensuring that Prince William and Princess Emma were being properly attended to by their accompanying staff. James could see her processing the implications of what she was hearing, her expression reflecting the weight of a decision that would affect not only her own safety, but the success of an event that represented months of planning and significant charitable fundraising. "Captain Mitchell," she said quietly, "I think we need to have that private conversation you mentioned during the flight." They moved to a secure conference room within the airport's administrative facility, where James could brief Princess Charlotte on the full scope of the security concerns without the children overhearing potentially alarming details. Chief Inspector MacDonald accompanied them, bringing additional intelligence that had been gathered throughout the afternoon. "Your Highness," James began, "the intelligence we've received indicates that a well-organized group of anti-monarchy protesters has planned to disrupt tonight's charity gala. While they don't appear to intend physical harm, their planned activities could create situations that would be difficult to control and potentially dangerous for all attendees." Princess Charlotte listened carefully as James and MacDonald outlined the specific details of the security threat. The protesters had apparently coordinated their activities through social media, attracting supporters from across Scotland who were motivated by various grievances against the monarchy and royal expenditures. "What are our options?" Princess Charlotte asked, though James could see in her expression that she already understood the limited nature of their choices. MacDonald responded first, his voice reflecting years of experience with similar security challenges. "Your Highness, from a pure security standpoint, we would recommend postponing tonight's event until we can implement enhanced security measures and ensure controlled access to the venue. The current situation presents too many variables for us to guarantee your safety and that of the other attendees." James watched Princess Charlotte's face as she absorbed this recommendation, seeing the play of emotions that reflected her internal struggle between personal safety and public duty. The charity gala represented far more to her than a simple social event. It was a culmination of her personal commitment to the children's hospital that had saved her own daughter's life years earlier. "Captain Mitchell," she said quietly, "what's your assessment of the situation?" James had been dreading this question, knowing that his answer would carry enormous weight in Princess Charlotte's decision-making process. His professional training demanded that he prioritize her safety above all other considerations, but his understanding of her character and commitments made him acutely aware of what canceling the event would cost her personally. "Your Highness," James said carefully, "the security risks are real and substantial. However, I also understand what this event means to you personally and to the families who will benefit from tonight's fundraising efforts. If we proceed, it would require implementing additional security measures that would significantly change the character of the event." Princess Charlotte was quiet for several moments, clearly weighing the competing demands of safety and duty. When she spoke, her voice reflected the same calm determination that James had come to admire throughout their years of working together. "I need to ask you both a difficult question," she said. "If we implement every possible security measure, additional personnel, controlled access, modified venue arrangements, can you provide reasonable assurance of safety for all attendees?" MacDonald and James exchanged glances, both understanding that they were being asked to make professional judgments that would carry significant responsibility regardless of the outcome. After a moment of consideration, MacDonald responded, "Your Highness, with enhanced security measures, we can significantly reduce the risks, but we cannot eliminate them entirely. The size and motivation of the protest group means that some level of disruption is almost certain to occur. James added his own assessment to McDonald's. The question becomes whether we can manage that disruption in a way that maintains safety while allowing the charitable goals of the evening to be achieved. Princess Charlotte stood and walked to the window of the conference room, looking out at the Scottish landscape that surrounded Edinburgh Airport. James could see her processing not just the immediate decision before her, but the broader implications of how she balanced personal safety against public duty. "I want to proceed with tonight's event," she said finally, turning back to face James and McDonald. "But I want every possible security measure implemented, and I want a clear understanding that if the situation becomes dangerous at any point during the evening, we will immediately withdraw." The decision made, James and McDonald spent the next 2 hours coordinating an enhanced security plan that would allow the charity gala to proceed while providing maximum protection for all attendees. Additional security personnel were deployed, access routes were modified, and emergency evacuation procedures were established. As evening approached, James found himself reflecting on the extraordinary day they had experienced. What had begun as a routine escort mission had evolved into a complex test of problem-solving, diplomatic navigation, and security assessment. Each challenge had been met and overcome through the combined efforts of dedicated professionals who understood that their ultimate responsibility was protecting people who serve the public good. The charity gala itself proved to be a remarkable success, despite the protesters who gathered outside the venue. Princess Charlotte's speech was emotionally powerful, drawing on her personal experience as a mother whose child had been treated at the hospital they were supporting. The fundraising goals were not only met, but exceeded, ensuring that the medical facility would be able to expand its services to help even more children in need. During a quiet moment in the evening, as James maintained his watchful position near the head table, Princess Charlotte approached him with an expression that combined gratitude, respect, and genuine affection. "Captain Mitchell," she said quietly, "I want you to know that your service today went far beyond anything that could be expected or required. You not only ensured our safety, but helped make it possible for us to fulfill our commitments to people who needed our support." James felt an unexpected surge of emotion as he processed her words. Throughout his career in royal protection, he had maintained careful professional boundaries, understanding that his relationship with the royal family needed to remain focused on security and duty. However, the events of the day had revealed something deeper, a genuine mutual respect and care that went beyond mere professional obligation. "Your Highness," he replied, "today reminded me why I chose this profession. Protecting people who dedicate their lives to serving others is more than just a job. It's a privilege and an honor." As the evening concluded successfully, with hundreds of thousands of pounds raised for the Children's Hospital and no serious security incidents, James allowed himself to feel a satisfaction that went beyond professional accomplishment. The day had tested every aspect of his training and judgment, but it had also reinforced his understanding of why his work mattered. The journey back to London the following morning was peaceful and uneventful, a stark contrast to the challenges of the previous day. Princess Charlotte and her children were relaxed and happy, the success of the charity gala having provided a positive conclusion to what had been an emotionally demanding experience. As their aircraft approached London, James reflected on how much had changed since their departure just 24 hours earlier. The routine escort mission had become something far more significant, a reminder that the most important moments in life often emerge from the most challenging circumstances, and that the bonds between people who serve together can transcend professional boundaries to become something approaching genuine friendship and mutual respect. Princess Emma, who had been remarkably patient throughout their extended journey, approached James as they prepared to land. "Captain Mitchell," she said with the directness that only children possess, "yesterday was quite an adventure, wasn't it? I'm glad you were there to take care of us." James smiled, recognizing that the 8-year-old had captured the essence of their experience better than any official report or professional assessment could. "Yes, Your Highness," he replied. "It was quite an adventure, and I'm honored that I could be part of it." As they disembarked at London, James knew that the events of the previous day would remain with him throughout his career and beyond. The combination of professional challenges, human connection, and successful service to people who dedicated their lives to helping others had created memories that would endure long after the official reports were filed and the security assessments were completed. The charity gala had raised enough funds to purchase new medical equipment that would help save children's lives for years to come. The protesters had been managed without incident, demonstrating that security concerns could be addressed without abandoning important public commitments. Most importantly, the trust and respect between James and the royal family had been strengthened through shared challenges and mutual support during difficult circumstances. In the weeks that followed, James would receive official commendations for his handling of the complex situation, but he knew that the most meaningful recognition had come from Princess Charlotte's simple expression of gratitude and respect. The day had reminded him that the most important aspects of service, loyalty, dedication, and genuine care for others, could never be captured in regulations or procedures, but emerged only through the daily choice to put others' needs before one's own. The story of their delayed journey and eventual success would become part of the unofficial history shared among royal protection officers, a reminder that the most challenging assignments often provided the most rewarding opportunities for service. For James, it would always represent a defining moment in his career when everything he had trained for and believed in was put to the ultimate test and proved equal to the challenge.